wpr.org.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Wednesday, June 22nd meeting of the Moscow Planning and Zoning Commission and begin with approval of the minutes from the May 25th meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any additions, corrections, deletions? All right. Well, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, that was quick. Correspondence from staff?
Nothing from staff.
Okay, and I think I had forwarded, and you may not have caught up in your email yet, some correspondence from Victoria Seaver as follow-up to our discussion about parking lot landscaping issues.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that formally goes into the correspondence or not, but it was an article that and with some commentary.
I think just because it was via email, it doesn't need to be in the record, but we could certainly,
Okay.
I could bring it next time and we could read it into the record just so, I think next time we're talking about off-street parking landscape standards, so it might be appropriate next
Okay.
time to share it. And then we can
That's
put
perfect.
we can put it in the record next time.
Okay, sounds good. Transportation Commission meeting report.
It'll be a short report. We've already heard about the last meeting I went to, and the next meeting will be on the 14th of July, and I've not yet seen an agenda for that.
So did
4
we
4
hear-
o'clock in this room.
So did we hear from your June 9th meeting? Because we didn't meet on June 7th.
Well, let's see.
Because we didn't have a
Well,
June
let
7th.
me
So I may
simply
ask
say
you
it wasn't anything particularly earth-shattering then.
Okay, sounds good. All right. Next item on the agenda is called open microphone, and it's an opportunity for members of the public to come and speak to the commission regarding matters that are not on the agenda or currently pending before planning and zoning. Is anybody interested? Okay. Well, I guess we'll move on to the public hearing, and this one is regarding the planned unit development, and Mike's going to give a presentation. Mike Ray is going to give a presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Before you tonight, we have a planning and development proposal. The name of the project is Identity on Main. And it's a mixed-use development. We have 154 proposed multifamily residential units comprised within 5 residential buildings. Also have a standalone 3,000 square foot commercial retail building with 3 tenant spaces. The first one, 1,255 square feet, have a 965 square foot space, as well as a smaller 780 square foot space. Just to familiarize yourself with the property, it's highlighted in blue at the center of your screen, approximately 6 acres in size. This is the old Domino's Pizza property here to the south. We've got Main Street, US 95, heading north, south. Also have part of the property is the old railroad corridor that parallels Paradise Creek, which you can see here under the tree cover. Also have the old Stubbs Seed Warehouse building at the south couplet, and this would be Troy Highway here heading due east. Just a closer view of the property. This is an older aerial, probably from 2012, so there has been some multifamily apartment complexes that have been developed directly on the property to the south. Looking at the area, this is a floodplain map. As you can see, the blue dashed area here represents the floodway. Within the 100-year floodplain is represented by the red line here, so encompasses a large majority of the property. Also extends to properties to the northeast of Troy Highway. Looking at our comprehensive plan land use designation map, the subject property is entirely within the urban mixed land use designation, as well as the properties to the south, the properties to the northeast with frontage on Troy Highway, as well as Legacy Crossing Overlay District, which is the brown area to the northwest there. What the comp plan says about the urban mix designation is those designated areas are intended to provide for infill development as well as adaptive reuse of areas that surround downtown. Within those areas, you want a rich mix of residential and limited commercial uses. Those should be promoted through the development of small urban apartments, townhomes, and 2 to 3 story vertically mixed-use buildings. Urban mixed area should provide a pedestrian connection between the University of Idaho and downtown, and provide space for a variety of housing, alternatives, niche retail, restaurants, artist studios, and personal and professional services. It also states that off-street parking should be required, but the requirement should be reduced in this area due to the likely number of non-motorized travel the uses will attract. So like I mentioned before, properties to the north, southwest are also within that designation. You also have the Berman Creekside Park, which is a city park that connects to Paradise Path, which also goes through the property, and that's currently designated as parks and open space. Looking at the comp plan designation for Main Street, Highway 95, it's a national highway, and it's designated as such within our comp plan. Looking at the zoning configuration of the property in the area, it's currently comprised of 3 zoning districts. You have the motor business zone, which encompasses the old Domino's property. You also have general business, which wraps the property frontage on the old railroad property, as well as the Stubbs Seed Warehouse property. And the lighter shade of yellow is R4, which is our multifamily residential zoning district. Urban mixed commercial is across the street. That represents Legacy Crossing Overlay District. And the lighter shade of blue directly to the west, along Sweet to the north and south of Sweet Avenue, is the University Zoning District. It's within the University of Idaho. So I just wanted to briefly go through the 3 different zones on the property. Typically what general business is intended to provide for the location and grouping of compatible retail enterprisings, having common characteristics of dispensing commodities, providing professional services, or providing personal services to the individual, but do not involve more than incidental or limited assembly, fabrication, or storage of commodities. Motor business zone is really intended for the location and grouping of compatible uses, and they generally are intended to provide transient motor vehicle-based trade. Our R4 zone is really the most intense residential zone, multifamily residential, usually applied where activity levels are high and adequate public facilities are available, and it's usually near the University of Idaho campus or central business district. So I just wanted to refresh everybody's memory. Some of you may not be familiar what a plan unit development is. It's essentially creating another zoning district on top of what we currently have in the underlying zones. And so projects that may not fit completely within underlying zones, and in this case we have 3 distinct zoning districts, which may be a challenge to cater or accommodate a project on the entire property with different regulations for different areas. So this PUD option allows for departures from the requirements of the allowed uses of the underlying zone district through the process. The intent of the PUD option is to permit and encourage innovative, economical, and attractive development which allocates appropriate areas for improvements, open space, recreation, includes land uses which harmonize with natural features and constraints, promotes efficient, innovative, economical, attractive, environmentally sensitive, and mixed-use development, and which efficiently phases and locates public and private services and facilities. So this is the site plan of the proposal. Have it geo-referenced on a aerial of the area. As you can see, I have one larger building here, which is Building A. And you also have 4 smaller buildings. These 5 buildings are all residential buildings. This would be the 3,000 square foot commercial retail building, and you also have a smaller bike warehouse building there. You got 2 main points of access. One currently exists close to the south couplet. This would be the existing approach. That is proposed to remain there but be converted into a fire truck access, emergency service access only, which would be bollarded on either end. The primary point of access is proposed to be at the intersection of Sweet Avenue and Main Street. So right here, you already have a signalized intersection. The intersection will need to be widened to 3 lanes. Currently, it's only the width only allows for about 2 lanes going into the development. This would be their site plan, so goes into the development here. We have a large parking lot here to the southeast. You've got Building A, Building B, C, D, and E further off the screen. This would be the emergency services access. This would be the main point of access, 3,000 square foot commercial building with a parking lot at the rear. You can see Paradise Path, which transects the development, heads northwest and then south, and then heads to the intersection of Sweet Avenue. You also have Paradise Creek, which you can see here, which separates the Stubbs Seed Warehouse building at that south couplet. Just a closer up view of the southeast of the development. You've got building C, D, and you also have a smaller building E here. We've got a long linear parcel for this property, so it makes fitting and parking a challenge, and so you end up with a long linear access drive with parking lot. These are the building elevations that are submitted, conceptuals. This would be looking from 95, looking northeast. Sweet Avenue would be right here going into the development. This is another conceptual looking southeast. This would be the emergency access road there. 4 stories in total height for the main buildings. Building E is a little bit shorter. It's 3 stories in height. It's a view from Paradise Path. So these are the what they're calling townhouse units. They're still multifamily, but more in a townhouse configuration. So it would be the Sweet Avenue, Main Street intersection. You can see the retail, the commercial retail building there on the east side of the screen. Another view of that same area. Kind of an overhead view looking east. So these were the building elevations for Building A. This would be the east side of the building facing the parking lot. This would be the 95 side. This would be the main leasing office there at the bottom front of the building. Another view, this would be the south elevation, so you would have Sweet Avenue coming in here on the south side. This would be a west elevation, so you'd be looking from that Sweet Avenue main intersection northeast of the building. This would be a floor plan of Building A. So contained within the first floor, you have a leasing office, you have a resident fitness center, you also have a lounge and a communal study room with individual study rooms as part of this larger communal room. And within this building, you have 91, what they're being referred to as flats. They're apartments, but that's the way the developers are being referring to the units within this building. You also have a large internal courtyard within this area, showing second floor, just comprised of flats. Third floor, similar, and then the fourth floor, and you have a communal deck area here on this side. These are the elevations of the townhouse units. So these are the ones that are facing Paradise Path in a linear configuration, paralleling the path. This would be a north elevation, so this would be looking from the path to the face of the building. This would be a south elevation, which would be have frontage on the parking lot area. This represents the east elevation, the side of the building, as well as the west elevation here. These are the floor plans for the townhouse units, really comprised of 3-bedroom and 4-bedroom units. And within buildings B, C, and D, they all have 20 units per building, 10 3-bedroom and 10 4-bedroom units. So they have more of a traditional up-down configuration. Each unit is 2 stories. So usually they have the living room area, kitchen, a bedroom on the bottom, and then you go upstairs and you have access to a couple additional bedrooms, or maybe 3 in some circumstances, with bathrooms off of each bedroom. Really same configuration. These are just third and fourth floor plans. This would be building E, which is a little bit smaller than the rest of the townhouse buildings. This would be the elevation looking from the north, so this would be off of the path there. South would be off of the parking lot. And then you have the east and the west elevations here. Looking at the floor plan, within this building you have 3 5-bedroom units. And so I believe that these are the only 5-bedroom units that are part of the development, and they're all located within this building. And it is 3 stories in height. Looking at the commercial retail building, really a single story in height. You have the 3 tenant spaces, facade articulations, awnings, metal awnings, change in color patterns. Looking at the north elevation, so this would be facing Sweet Avenue entrance. South elevation would be facing the properties to the south. And this would be the floor plan for the proposal. You have 1 unit which is 965 square feet, 1 with 780 square feet, and the largest one that's at the intersection is 1,255 square feet in size. Looking at the landscape plan that was submitted, quite a bit of landscaping as part of the development. You have a reinforcement of trees and shrubs along the path. So you see the path here. And just various trees and shrubs scattered throughout the development. This is the east side. As you can see, the continuation of the vegetation along the Paradise Path heading over to Berman Creekside Park. So taking a look at our bonus density for plan unit developments, if you come in within the base density, then that means you don't need to do any bonus density in order to achieve the number of units that you wish. This project, general business, motor business, and R4, the base density is 24 dwelling units per acre. So we've got about 6 acres in size, which equates to 145 units, which this project is 9 units above the base density. So they'd need a bonus density of to accommodate the 9 units. That equals 7% bonus density. And so the applicant's chosen to look at common open space increases as well as landscaping. So within the common open space section, you're able to achieve up to a 10% increase. And then with the landscaping section, you're able to achieve up to a 5% increase. So with the common open space areas, preservation of riparian areas and pedestrian bicycle paths is one of the items that counts. So the applicant has chosen to utilize this. They're preserving the riparian area between the path and the creek, as well as areas between the path and the buildings. There's at least 10 feet there. And they're also including the landscape plan, which, like I showed you before, includes trees and shrubs on both sides of the path. And in staff's opinion, with a maximum of 15% that could be granted under this bonus density, we feel that at least a 3% bonus density is warranted in staff's opinion. The issues, instead of giving the full 10%, Paradise Path is already has an easement across the property, so it's already dedicated and built. And so that, taking that into consideration, we feel that about 3% would be warranted for the common open space and landscaping. The other aspect of bonus density they've chosen to utilize is sustainable development, which can be awarded up to 15%. Within that section are green building provisions, and the applicant's chosen to utilize a number of those, and I'll just briefly go through those. Proposing Energy Star rated appliances to reduce energy consumption, low water use plumbing fixtures, which reduce water consumption, low E insulated windows, increase wall and attic insulation to reduce reliance on mechanical systems, recycled content building materials, low and no VOC sealants, adhesives, and paints to improve indoor air quality, and additional bicycle parking to reduce reliance on automobiles, high efficiency HVAC equipment to reduce energy, and it's an infill development location which reduces demands on infrastructure. So given those and the maximum 15%, staff feels at least 4% bonus density is warranted, and with a combination of the common open space and additional landscaping, that would get the applicant up to the 7% that's required to get the 9 additional dwelling units that are proposed. Taking a further look at our access, streets, and traffic for the area, I mentioned before US 95 is a national highway. They're proposing to use the existing approach as fire access only, with the primary access coming off Sweet Avenue in Maine. It will need to be expanded to 3 lanes. They've conducted a traffic impact study, which is currently under review for Idaho Transportation Department, which is the entity that's in charge of national highways within the state of Idaho and US 95. And so it's currently under review. It's anticipated that Main Street will need to be widened in order to accommodate a dedicated southbound left turn lane into the development. And so if you're in that middle lane heading south, you won't need to wait for cars queuing to turn left into the development. And so it will need to be widened. That's initially what it looks like per the traffic impact study. ITD is still working with the developer on other mitigation efforts for the roadway if they're warranted. And the developer will be responsible for those improvements. And so what I'm talking about with a dedicated southbound turn lane, you see it's 4 lanes here, and you have the middle lane. It would just need to be widened probably at a point somewhere here in transition in order to accommodate that middle lane where you can turn left into the development as you're heading southbound. And I think I mentioned before, I think it's about 2 lanes is what the current intersection design can accommodate right now, and so that'll need to be widened in order to accommodate the 3 lanes. You've got the dedicated eastbound lane, you've got the left-hand turn lane, and straight as well, and then the right-hand turn lane out of the development. Off-street parking is a larger consideration for this project. The proposal as it exists now includes a 47% proposed reduction in the required off-street parking. So they're providing 214 of the required 402 spaces. The off-street parking jumps up a little bit here because if you recall our off-street parking standards, if you're adjacent to a collector or arterial road, then there's an increase in parking for multifamily if you have 3 or more bedrooms per unit. And so that's one of the main reasons why the 402 spaces is so high. If you weren't directly adjacent to an arterial U.S. highway, it would be probably less by about 50 spaces. The developer has proposed a parking mitigation plan in order to mitigate the substantial reduction in off-street parking. It provided a letter that's within your packet, cites parking demand data, which the Transportation Engineer Institute puts out publications, and the current one of trip generation manuals states that the average spaces per multifamily unit, and it doesn't draw a distinction between 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, it's just multifamily unit, is 1.23 spaces per unit, which comes in less than what the applicant is providing. So the applicant's providing more than that national average. But that's a national average, and so that includes all cities, urban areas, as well as rural areas. They cite the surrounding neighborhood. So you have the highway on one side, the campus across the street, and you also have other multifamily developments. The closest neighborhood is on the northeast side of Troy Highway, and so you have a little bit less likelihood of overflow parking if students do bring cars to this development and don't have a place to park. It's a less likelihood that it would affect adjacent properties. The majority of the residents that this development's targeting are University of Idaho students, with the University of Idaho being across the street. The majority of those students would either walk or bike to class, given the current parking situation on campus. They're also proposing a car share program, which would include one electric vehicle, which is proposed. I think staff is more comfortable with providing 2 vehicles, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the recommendations. But it would be similar to a zip car program, which is currently on campus at U of I and WSU. It would be a car rental program, so if a student that lives in the development doesn't bring a car and chooses to, have extended trips to the grocery store or out of town, they could use the car share, the zip car, in order to make those trips. And then the developer is also proposing to designate and rent on-site parking spaces. So as part of the development, and you have your apartment unit or your bedroom, you'll also be able to rent a parking stall within the development. And then just the location of development. Close to downtown amenities, within a half mile of walking downtown, you have the University of Idaho campus. Directly across the street, you have Legacy Crossing as well. Paradise Path is right there going through the development, which allows you to go east or west, kind of a central hub. You also have the Intermodal Transit Center, which is a block away on Sweet Avenue and Railroad. The applicant's also proposing restrictive covenants in the lease agreements for all residents. So they would be just putting them on notice that parking is limited on site, and that unless they choose to rent or lease a space from the developer, then they wouldn't be able to park their car on the premises. And then the developers also provided comparison projects in other markets, which shows substantially less off-street parking than what the City of Moscow requires for multifamily projects. Looking at the bicycle parking a little bit closer, that's one of the major components of their parking mitigation plan. Back in 2011, we had some of you may recall, we tried to require bicycle parking for all commercial and multifamily developments. And so when we were working with the developer on the mitigation plan, we had used a lot of the same information. So as you recall, it had gone to the council level, and it was denied at council, and so it never was passed. And at the time, we had done what we commonly do is research other jurisdictions across the country and in the Northwest, and get an average about what the rate of bicycle parking per stall or per dwelling unit, the average of those numbers. And so that's what we had worked with the developer, on this mitigation plan, requiring them to meet what the bicycle parking would have been at the time would we have passed that ordinance. So at the time, it was 1 space per 1-bedroom unit, 1.5 spaces per 2-bedroom unit, 2 spaces per 3+ bedroom unit. And so 255 spaces would have been required if you do the calculations for this development. The applicant's proposing 258 spaces. 130 of those are within the bike warehouse building, which is a long-term secured facility. You also have 128 spaces, which are generally located in stairwells or directly adjacent to a lot of the residential buildings, or actually all the buildings within the development, that are intended for short-term use. A lot of them aren't covered, although the ones in the stairwells certainly have some type of shelter there. This would be the bike warehouse, a closer view of that building, which would accommodate 130 bikes. And this is just, you have the commercial retail building there. This is the Sweet Avenue parking lot access. So, in staff's opinion, through all these mitigation techniques, we feel that the plan is sufficient with one recommendation. When you go through and look at all the data to back this up, it first starts out with the urban mix comp plan designation. We have the statement, the comp plan directly states that off-street parking should be required, but the requirement should be reduced in the area due to the likely number of non-motorized travel the uses will attract. You also have Legacy Crossing across the street, which is also the urban mix designation. So within Legacy Crossing, you're only required to provide 50% of the required parking within that area, and that's under the urban mix commercial zone. And so when you look at the urban mix designation in that zoning district, another route the applicant could have gone would be to rezone the whole property urban mix commercial, and then they would have just got a blanket reduction and wouldn't have to do any parking mitigation plan or anything like that. So, in staff's opinion, that is a positive that they're doing the parking mitigation plan and not just going straight to a rezone for the area and going through the plan unit development process. Proximity to University of Idaho campus, directly across the street. It's targeted towards university students, so the substantial number of trips will either be walking or bicycling to campus. Proximity to downtown amenities, like I mentioned before, it's about a half mile to downtown. You could do, a wide variety of restaurants. You have a grocery store directly downtown. You have a wide variety of amenities to serve the development. You also have Paradise Path, which I had mentioned before. Is you have a crossroads there, which you can either go the east side or the west side of town. It's a central location, and that serves the development well. You also have an irregular shape of the parcel, and so you have once you lay out parking lots, they're usually rectangular in shape and are hard to fit on our parcels that are so irregular as this one is. And so in order to really form the buildings to the natural features like Paradise Creek and Paradise Path through the development, really leaves limited room for parking on the property. It's also separated from neighborhoods that could be affected by overflow. Like I mentioned before, you have multifamily developments to the south. Large number of those could control the possible overflow parking from this development onto those by just requiring a permitting of their residents. And the closest neighborhood is on the north side of Troy Highway, so it's unlikely that you'd have overflow for parking within those neighborhoods. The only issue is that staff recommends the applicant start with 2 car shares and track usage, and that would be our only recommendation on the parking mitigation plan. Looking at water and sewer, currently extended via existing mains that run north-south and Main Street. We have a 2012 comprehensive water system plan that was recently adopted, and this property is considered developable within that plan. Also, Public Works has taken a look at the existing system, and there should be a memo in your packet from Bob Bavell stating that the existing system has adequate potable and fire flows to serve the proposed development. Looking at sanitary, there's an existing manhole which is at the northwest corner of the property and closer to the bridge location there. Public Works has also determined that the system has adequate capacity to convey additional flow from this development. And our latest plan was 2011. Our comprehensive sewer system plan also lists this property as developable within that plan. Addressing storm sewer will eventually be conveyed to Paradise Creek. The majority of this property is within the 100-year floodplain, so they're exempt from a lot of our stormwater regulations for detaining. If you detain and there's a flood event, then it just ends up coming back up through the stormwater catch basins. And so they'll be exempt from a lot of the stormwater. And so they'll still need to do a stormwater management plan. It'll be that they just won't need to detain the stormwater. Looking at Parkland Dedication, because this property had never gone through a subdivision plat process or a lot division that required Parkland Dedication, there has been no parkland dedication for the property, and so under the PUD provisions, it would be subject to our subdivision parkland dedication requirements. And so if you look at it, it's based upon what zoning district it's in. So 9% is about the maximum. So we have R4, general business, and motor business, which all require 9% net developable area. If you factor out the path as well as the creek, you get a number, 9% of that is 0.405 acres. So about half acre would be the requirement for parkland dedication. Our current fee in lieu of a dedication is $13,500 per acre, which equates to $5,467.50. Our Parks and Rec department has looked at the land versus improvements, and they feel that Paradise Path improvements such as lighting would be more beneficial than dedicating any type of land within the development. They said the installation of lighting along Paradise Path is the desired amenity to substitute for the fee in lieu of. Lighting through this section of the pathway will significantly increase safety for residents of the PUD as well as general users. And this was reviewed by the Pathways Commission as well as the Parks and Rec Commission. And they recommended that lighting improvements be the desired dedication for this development. And the developer will need to work with the Parks and Rec department in order to put together a plan for lighting improvements along the path. So with that, staff's recommendation tonight is that the Commission approve the preliminary PUD proposal for the Identity on Main development that includes 154 multifamily residential units and a 3,000 square foot commercial retail building with 3 tenant spaces. And we have about 5 conditions, 2 from community development. The first one, that the applicant shall provide 2 car share vehicles on site that will be tracked for usage and reviewed by staff 2 years after the certificate of occupancy is issued on the project. Staff shall determine whether to allow the number of car share vehicles to be reduced to 1 based upon the documented usage of the vehicles. And the applicant shall work with the Parks and Rec department to satisfy the parkland dedication requirements of the proposed PUD. And then coming from our engineering department of public works, developer shall meet any requirements deemed necessary by ITD to mitigate impact on the transportation system in the area. Any utilities, public utilities that are on site are required to be within 20-foot wide minimum utility easements. And then if it's necessary to build public water mains on site for fire suppression, those mains need to be built so that they're looped connection for water quality and redundancy purposes. And so with that, I'd certainly be able to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, beginning with commissioners. Nels, go ahead.
Mike, just remind me about being in the flood plain. What impacted that? Was there a necessity to raise the first floor at all?
Yeah, they'd have to be 2 feet above base flood elevation. So the civil plans that the developers submitted that are attached to your packet all show the finished floor elevations that are 2 feet above the base flood elevation for the area. So that they've addressed that.
Mike, would the potential parking lot landscaping plans that we've been working on have an impact to a layout like this? That is, would it even further reduce the number of slots available because of the landscaping requirement?
It looks like it would, and just on a glancing at the site plan that they've submitted with the landscape plan, it looks like we'd probably require a little bit more landscaping, but it was a balance between the amount of parking that can be provided on site and the landscaping. Now, we wouldn't be able to go back and retroactively require more landscaping. This would be, going through the PUD process, this is really set in stone. As far as there's minor deviations, but the entire concept, going through the PUD process is set at this meeting, at the preliminary and final.
Questions down here?
Deb?
I don't know if I did the math right without calculator, but I came up with 1.87 spaces per bed per unit for parking instead of the 1.23. So that's significantly less than we have in our current code, where were you saying that? I don't know that I believe that people aren't going to each want a car. But if that's the case, where are they going to park? There is no neighborhood space around there that I know of, and I live at that end of town.
I mean, that would just be the choice of renting a room or a unit within this development, that you don't have a car or either use bicycle or
But you
walk
could
on
have a
campus.
car and not park in the parking lot. So I'm saying, where would they be parking? I don't know of anything other than the neighborhood to the north, which already has a lot of parking taken up on the street. I'm just picturing an awful lot of congested parking on city streets.
It would either be that or the University of Idaho that has overnight parking in some areas, like over by the Kibbe Dome. So they would either need to leave their car at home or provide another location to store it within the city.
So pertinent to parking, I have some of the similar questions. But in terms of stormwater runoff from the parking going into the creek, if it's unmitigated, is the landscaping plan along the creek going to offer some opportunity for mitigation of stormwater, cleaning the parking lot, oil, et cetera?
Yeah, and the applicant can certainly address what their plan is for stormwater management.
Because that would be an issue if we're trying to clean up the creek. I have also a question in terms of how the turn lane would be implemented, I guess for southbound traffic turning left into the development. Because it looks like if you widen the highway, you lose the sidewalk, and if there's going to be a big push to have pedestrian access to downtown, all of a sudden the sidewalk is gone for getting downtown.
It'd be widened on the east side of 95, and there's about 10, 15 feet between the curb and Paradise Path.
Okay, I couldn't tell from the site plan what the intent was there.
So that'll put the path, excuse me,
Go ahead. No.
that'll put the path, if that happens, the path will really be close to the curb, won't it?
Well, as it heads south and enters this, goes to the Sweet Avenue intersection, it goes closer and closer towards the street. And so it will, but it will only be, right now underneath the traffic impact study, it cites only a need for 2.5 queuing spaces, so a standard, queuing length about 25 feet, so it's probably only going to be about 75 feet where you would need the taper in order to accommodate the turn lane. But yeah, it will move it closer to the path.
Yes, Joel.
Is there any provision for visitor parking?
Not that I've seen on the plan, but you could certainly ask the developer.
Deb? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Do you feel like our green building program is robust enough to ensure that all of the items that they're using for bonus density will be met?
I think it is, yeah.
I think it is?
Yeah.
Great.
Just to follow up on the parking thing, that's always the boogeyman at all of these things. Everybody's concerned about parking. There's quite a bit of information in here suggesting that the current generation of students is less reliant on cars and is in fact shunning cars at an increasing rate. We also have lots of on-campus housing, and I'm pretty sure that the amount of available parking there is far less than what the city might require for equivalent dwelling units. Do you have any data on local student parking use, either on campus or at the student housing that's south of town off at 95? I can't remember the name of it.
The Grove.
The Grove, yeah.
About a month ago, we'd gone around early in the morning just to see utilization of parking lots, primarily out there on Baker and A Street. And what we noticed was probably about 80 to 85% utilization of the parking lot. And so, that people could be leaving early for work or school. We got out there about 6 in the morning and did a survey of just available parking spots that were out there. And so I'd probably say that just looking at your typical apartment complex, anywhere between 75 and 80%, the parking lot is full, at the maximum, the highest time.
I mean, one easy fact check would be to find out what the permit sales are in university lots to students and what the increase is over the last 10 years, because I don't think the trend has been going down. I would have a hard time believing that. But you can see whether it's going up or down if people are really using cars less, which I think that's a national trend, but I don't think it's a local one.
Yeah,
that would be my opinion on that.
Yeah, all the data
Yeah.
supports the national trend, but we don't have local numbers. No.
But that would be one way to find out from the permitting office and on campus, parking permitting, whether their sales are going up in the student sales or down. Yeah, so. Other questions?
I guess I just had one on the designating and renting spaces. Did you mention something about that? Like
yeah,
when they
that,
sign it,
that,
like when they
that was
sign
just
the lease?
mentioned within their parking mitigation plan that in other locations they're choosing to designate spaces for units and allowing the residents to be able to rent those spaces, and it sounds like that's what they're proposing here.
Oh, okay.
It's probably on the drawings, and I just missed it, but how close is the front facade of the north face of the buildings that are along the path? How close are they to the path?
They're about 15 feet away. It varies depending upon which building, but anywhere from about 10 to 15 feet.
So is there some plan to mitigate any kind of erosion or siltation that's going to occur to the creek during the building process, since that's so close?
Yeah, our erosion
open?
control requires that no silt or sediment be deposited in any stormwater line or creek. So they'll have to put up silt fence around the whole property. It's completely flat. So, the likelihood that you're going to have a whole lot of erosion is probably pretty minimal, and all the development's going to be happening on the south side of the path, which is generally crowned out, towards the ends.
How close does the property line come to the path? Because the path is not part of the property, right?
Property line actually goes to the middle of Paradise Creek.
So
It's
then,
the
is that
path
just
is
an easement? for
path
the
is an easement.
It's an easement.
Yep.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay, I guess we'll move to opening the public hearing. And in this case, we invite members of the public or representatives of the developer to come up and speak, those in favor in first phase here, to come up and speak on behalf of the development. And please state your name, address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. So are there representatives? The developer's representative can, yes. Yes, you should come
the
first.
applicant
Yes,
first.
I'm sorry, the applicant, I should say the applicant first, I'm sorry. Apologies there. Yeah, so. Yes, I did. Oh, yes, could you please state your name and
Yes,
yeah,
of course.
for the record and address for the public record.
So I'll start by just introducing myself. I'm Aaron Fields, and I'm the developer. I'm going to keep my comments really short. You've heard a very long presentation, so I don't want to bore you with more details of stuff they've already heard. We develop student housing mixed-use projects around the country, so we have quite a bit of experience by major universities. So we have quite a bit of experience with this type of environment and product type. We're very excited about this project. We put a lot of time and effort working with staff on designing this, and also trying to preempt most of the issues that you brought up. I think probably it's best that I'm available for questions, because I think there are a lot of questions that you're probably going to have that I think I have the answers to, and potentially some address your concerns. I will say the one thing that's important that you should note, as it relates to the parking, there are actually over 2 spaces. So there's a space, over 1 space per 2 students. So if there's a 4-bedroom unit, there will be 2 car spaces available for that unit. So if you are 4 friends living together, you will have the use of 2 cars to get around. Student housing and students, residents typically use their cars for storage purposes. They don't use it on a regular basis, like if you are a professional and has to go to work on a daily basis and so on. So you use it if you want to get away on a weekend, you want to go shopping and so on. And I think that Mike did a very good job of expressing and explaining kind of within the context of this project and use and location. The reality is that from our experience all over, and I think that there's this notion that every city and every town is so different than everywhere else. It just can't be that anywhere else is very different. But it's been our experience, and it's a significant amount of experience, that that's just not the case. The reality is that if you provide the parking spaces, they will bring the cars. If you make it more difficult for them, and meaning charging for it or not providing as many spaces, they just don't, and they find a way. I went to University of Maryland. People drive trucks in Maryland, right, all over. It's in kind of an urban area, and it's a rural area. I never had a car. It was 4 of us. We had no cars. I mean, it just so, and that's the trend more so with car sharing, with future autonomous driving. I mean, it's just the trend, and that's the reality of it. And I can tell you that this is by far the most amount of parking ratio that we're providing at any project that I've ever done around the country. I've never gone over this level of parking. And I know that was a concern for staff, and we met that because we have the space. But in reality, I kind of equate it to the days when Napster arrived, where everyone didn't believe that people are going to download music and the CD industry is going to stay and so on. And to me, I equate it to investing in building a CD manufacturing plant today because, back then, right, to build parking. I mean, if you don't provide the parking spaces, they're not going to bring their cars, and you're going to make it more difficult. And especially in the context of where this is located. The biggest issue typically is that if you're in a residential neighborhood and the students want to bring the car in because there's not enough, and they'll park in the residential neighborhood and make it a very difficult experience for the neighbors. We just don't have that here. They're surrounded by streets and surrounded by multifamily, and it's very difficult to do, and we can manage it. I have a project in Gainesville with 1,000 beds, and we have collectively 130-something parking spaces, and 2 of the buildings have 400 beds, comparable to here. We have 0. And we thought initially that we needed to rent off-site parking lots, and we did. We offered 20 parking spaces. I think we ended up renting 12 of them in a kind of a similar location. And Gainesville, Florida, if you've ever been there, they love their cars, right? So when they drive around, and in fact, it's much more difficult to get around, and it's a bigger town. So you don't have the amenities of being able to walk around and so on. I mean, we came here yesterday and we walked everywhere. I mean, everything is walkable. It's wonderful. The last thing I would say about parking, and I'm stressing the parking because I know that's an issue in most cities, and that is, in addition to what I was saying, just think of it from a strategy standpoint. Do we want to incentivize students to bring their cars in, given the effect on the environment, traffic, congestion, cost involved when students nowadays leave college with $30,000 in debt on average, where it costs about $5,000 just to carry a car? Why would we ever? And of course, at the end of the day, it is a very fun time in their lives. They're not the most responsible during the college years. Do we want them driving around? I mean, is that where we want to be? And is that what we want to incentivize them to do? And I think that's also in many ways why we don't have a lot of parking spaces in most of the developments that we have around the country. And I did provide a summary of kind of the ratios of parking that we have. So I'm here to answer kind of those concerns as well. As it relates to the project itself, we really try to diversify the unit mix to provide a very diverse mix and different buildings and so on to allow for different groups of students and so on to live there. One bedroom, a two bedroom, 3, 4, and 5 in townhomes. And not just
WPR.org.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Wednesday, June 22nd meeting of the Moscow Planning and Zoning Commission and begin with approval.
WPR.org.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Wednesday, June 22nd meeting of the Moscow Planning and Zoning Commission and begin with approval of the minutes from the May 25th meeting.
Make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any additions, corrections, deletions? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, that was quick. Correspondence from staff?
Nothing from staff.
Okay, and I think I had forwarded, and you may not have caught up in your email yet, some correspondence from Victoria Seaver as follow-up to our discussion about parking lot landscaping issues.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that formally goes into the correspondence or not, but it was an article that and with some commentary.
I think just because it was via email, it doesn't need to be in the record, but we could certainly,
Okay.
I could bring it next time and we could read it into the record just so, I think next time we're talking about off-street parking landscape standards, so it might be appropriate next
Okay.
time to share it. And then we can
That's
put
perfect.
we can put it in the record next time.
Okay, sounds good. Transportation Commission meeting report.
It'll be a short
WPR.org. WPR.org.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Wednesday, June 22nd meeting of the Moscow Planning and Zoning Commission and begin with approval of the minutes from the May 25th meeting.
Make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any additions, corrections, deletions? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, that was quick. Correspondence from staff?
Nothing from staff.
Okay, and I think I had forwarded, and you may not have caught up in your email yet, some correspondence from Victoria Seaver as follow-up to our discussion about parking lot landscaping issues.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that formally goes into the correspondence or not, but it was an article that and with some commentary.
I think just because it was via email, it doesn't need to be in the record, but we could certainly,
Okay.
I could bring it next time and we could read it into the record just so, I think next time we're talking about off-street parking landscape standards, so it might be appropriate next
Okay.
time to share it. And then we can
That's
put
perfect.
we can put it in the record next time.
Okay, sounds good. Transportation Commission meeting report.
It'll be a short report. We've already heard about the last meeting I went to, and the next meeting will be on the 14th of July, and I've not yet seen an agenda for that.
So did
4
we
4
hear-
o'clock in this room.
So did we hear from your June 9th meeting? Because we didn't meet on June 7th.
Well, let's see.
Because we didn't have a June
Well,
7th.
let me
So I may
simply
ask
say
you
it wasn't anything particularly earth-shattering then.
Okay, sounds good. All right. Next item on the agenda is called Open Microphone, and it's an opportunity for members of the public to come and speak to the commission regarding matters that are not on the agenda or currently pending before planning and zoning. Is anybody interested? Okay. Well, I guess we'll move on to the public hearing, and this one is regarding the planned unit development, and Mike's going to give a presentation. Mike Ray is going to give a presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Before you tonight, we have a planning and development proposal. The name of the project is Identity on Main. And it's a mixed-use development. We have 154 proposed multifamily residential units comprised within 5 residential buildings. Also have a standalone 3,000 square foot commercial retail building with 3 tenant spaces. The first one, 1,255 square feet, have a 965 square foot space, as well as a smaller 780 square foot space. Just to familiarize yourself with the property, it's highlighted in blue at the center of your screen, approximately 6 acres in size. This is the old Domino's Pizza property here to the south. We've got Main Street, US 95, heading north, south. Also have part of the property is the old railroad corridor.
Again, this is the emergency entrance. It's not for anybody's car to go through. It's really a pedestrian access and fire trucks, and this is our main entry. This is just a partial landscape plan just showing the greenery that we are incorporating throughout the site. This is the southern half. Again, I don't want to repeat what Mike's already said. And this just really shows how we're incorporating the path, highlighting the path. We think the path is great, and we don't want to turn our backs to it at all. We want to activate it, provide the lighting, and really make it a star of our site. Here's an aerial view. Again, just to show, this is the main access at suite. So the university entrance is over here. We've got our retail, the leasing office, and then the buildings kind of wrap around the pathway. Again, building A is our main building, the larger, and it has the flat units, which really just means single story. We've got leasing, fitness, study, lounge, and all the units are kind of wrapped around a central courtyard. And all the areas in the bluish color are any of the residents can use. So this is kind of the home base, I guess, of the site. This is a view from Main Street or Highway 95 at that emergency entrance, the pedestrian access, showing the buildings kind of lining up against the creek. It's another view of that main building A. So B, C, and D are the townhome units. So these are multiple stories along the path. Mike's already touched on this. So one thing to note is the decks and the patios that we do have on the path side, and we're really trying to interact with the path and not have a 4-story high building right next to the path. So we do have some variation in setbacks, and people can kind of hang out and really use the path. So our building B and D, just to talk about, I guess, colors and kind of where we were going with that, is B and D we have a blue and greenish scheme. And then on C and A we have the orange and yellow, and it just kind of gives each building its own little identity and individuality, I guess, so it's not all one. Everything looks exactly the same when you turn a corner. This is just highlighting the commercial. I'm going to zoom in here. So this, we really thought that having the commercial portion on our site is a benefit. We can get the public to come into the site. You don't just have to live there. And it really activates that main entry there. Not only can residents use that commercial space, but really it's for everybody, the community, and get them involved in the project. This is our bike warehouse. We have bike parking sprinkled throughout the project, but this is our main hub right across from the university. We thought it was a great spot and houses a lot of bikes securely. And this is from the intersection, just looking at the main leasing office and the commercial portion. This is just from the other side of that street. Again, we're really excited about this project, and Mike touched on a lot of stuff, so I'm just going to wrap it up. But I'm really excited, and we think it'll be a great asset. And that's it.
I still have one question
Yeah.
that I'm not sure Mike answered for me, or at least I didn't understand his answer. So all of your drawings don't reflect the fact that ITD will probably require a left turn lane, which
Correct.
means an additional travel lane of 12 feet. Where's that 12 feet going to come from? I still don't get it. Because it's either going to eat into what you show here as a pedestrian path system, or it's going to eat onto the other side of the highway, or it's going to be split between the two. I mean, you know what I mean? So we're adding we're inserting an additional lane in Highway 95, and it's got to take real estate from somewhere, because everything would push presumably out if we have 3 travel lanes, or 1 turn lane, and is that, where would, between the two of you, I don't completely understand where that land's going to manifest.
I don't know how to point to anything.
Well, it's going to end up transitioning from, some point right here, and that's where it's going to end up widening. So you'll have about 12 feet, and we've already looked at it to accommodate the turn lane, and we definitely have enough room on 95 in order to do that.
Okay.
It'll just be that I think we have an existing sidewalk right up at the back edge of the curb, then you have the path. Well, it's going to be shifting that closer to the path by about 12 feet.
But the sidewalk will
only
still
for
be
this area, because there's only going to be queuing for 2.5 vehicles, is what ITD is going to require there. And so it'll be at this point of the roadway that'll end up, tapering down and widening out into this intersection right there.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So you kind of lose the buffer strip with the trees for like the first two bushes or trees that are there.
Yeah.
That's what you're going to lose, right?
Well, there's nothing there right now,
But
in
we,
the
yeah,
visual.
yeah,
This
exactly.
picture.
Mike, before you wander off, on that left turn lane and that additional access, as I recall, in looking at this, the study indicated that there'd be about a 25% increase in trips per day. Is that right?
Coming from?
Comparable to what's currently on Sweet Avenue.
Vehicle trips? Sorry, I don't understand your question.
Yeah, in the traffic study,
Uh-huh.
the increase in traffic, as I recall, it was a 25% increase over what's currently over the current Sweet Avenue volume. Does that sound familiar?
I'd have to refresh my memory.
Okay.
Well, I think what you're talking about is the growth at the University of Idaho in terms of just traffic entering Sweet Avenue was going up by 25 up till 2037 or something.
I guess more my point was that, 2.5 queuing line for that. The impact of putting this there is not going to greatly increase the amount of traffic that's going in and out.
Sure.
Was my point.
Yeah. So 25% increase going into the development is what, at that intersection?
Right.
Yeah.
Michael, you've presumed, when you've looked at that lane taking the space, that the building can remain where it is. The building A won't be moved. Is that a presumption?
Yeah, it won't affect the path at all. So it's on the other side of the path. So it won't affect it at all.
Well, you're still there, Mike. The parking that's behind the commercial building, is there a certain amount of that it's not part of the parking for the residential portion because of the parking that's required for commercial space?
We all factored in, it's all factored in together.
It's all
Yeah,
together.
but I think if you look at the main sheet, there's a breakdown. I believe there's only about 10 to 12 spaces that are required for the commercial
The
component.
types, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Other folks in the audience who would like to come up and speak in favor of the development at this point? Well, right now, in favor. Okay, well, right, and we'll come to that next, yes.
Justin Rasmussen, 1435 Bora Avenue. As a resident and as a U of I alum, I think that one of the greatest challenges the university faces, and also the community as a result, is not having a competitive product out there in terms of what students are looking for when they're going to other universities. I know that feedback that I've gotten from friends and family that have come and toured the campus is they don't feel that there's the quality of housing that they're looking for at the U of I. And I, love this project, and I really do think that this helps meet that need and the demand that I think that there is. And I not only think it would be a benefit to the community, but the University of Idaho, I think, will greatly benefit from this project. So,
Okay, thank you.
thanks.
Any others? Yes. Knowles.
Madam Chair. Nils Peterson, 841 Travoy Way, Moscow. I want to talk to you about climate change. I don't believe climate change is named in our comprehensive plan. It's been emerging in our consciousness in the years since the plan was adopted. But the plan does make gestures in the directions that climate considerations would point. Over 100 years ago, our city fathers created an industrial corridor through the middle of the city. The railroad and those uses have atrophied. The comprehensive plan recognized that we are in a position to make new choices, and it steers us to increase the density and intensity of use. For years, climate scientists have modeled possible futures, including a scenario commonly called business as usual. Business as usual leads to climate disaster. The Paris Accords last December committed the world to finding a new trajectory, a departure from business as usual. Moscow must make its own small contribution to the world's effort. In 2014, the Moscow Citizen Survey included an item asking if the city should include climate change in its planning. Tonight, you are making a decision that will impact land use in the core of Moscow for 50 years or more. In the context of climate change and the Paris Accords, you need to consider the implication of committing to 50 years of business as usual. Your question tonight should be, does this project help Moscow change course, diverge from business as usual, and reduce the community carbon footprint? I already suggested that the comprehensive plan and subsequent supporting actions, such as Legacy Crossing and the UMC zone, point in the right climate direction, if not by name. That is criteria 1 in your relevant criteria and standards on which you should base your decision. Criteria 6 requires you find the project promotes innovative, efficient, and economic use. I think it could be understood to give you climate-related directives. Donald Shoup has published multiple pieces relating to parking and urban design. The most memorable title is The High Cost of Free Parking. My reading of Shoup does not include a climate cost, but I think tonight you can find that current city parking standards encourage driving because they make our city less compact. I think you should applaud this proposal's increase in density because it makes our city more compact, and I think you should approve its reduction in parking as part of a climate response, above and beyond the fact that it increases the density. If the railroad corridor with its ungainly shape is the legacy of choices 100 years ago, sprawling parking lots and wide streets are likely to be the legacy of our recent past. We need to move beyond them. Staff has noted the proximity of this project to key destinations, the university and downtown. And sitting on the bike path, this project has a well-developed position for non-motorized transportation to support longer trips in town. I'm sure there are those who are startled by the high-rise density and may long for idyllic suburban and rural models. It's time to begin mourning. The suburban sprawl model, with its high carbon footprint that was a unique American post-war experiment, fueled by abundant and cheap fossil fuels, has come to an end. It can't be maintained. The sustainable city will be compact, and it will favor other modes of transportation over automobiles. That is pointed to in our city's comprehensive plan, and this project shows us how it could look and the innovative and efficient uses that can move us in the direction away from business as usual and climate disaster. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any others in the category of in favor? Shelley?
Good evening. Shelley Bennett, 2279 Mosier Street in Moscow, Idaho. I was excited when we were able to put together a project on this much long await piece of property. And, for years we looked at trying to put a senior project or something that people could live in, and the seniors didn't want it because they didn't like the distance across the roads. They wanted something closer to amenities. They don't want to cross the highway. So this project is perfect for this piece of property. And Nils, I couldn't have heard it better. I couldn't have said it better. So we've wanted a walkable community. We want to encourage kids. I'm not a millennial. I'm a boomer, and I have 2 cars. My children and their friends don't have as many cars. And like Justin, who works with me, he and his family share a car. Most of my friends' children did not get driver's licenses until they were leaving town, and they did not take cars to college. Arizona State University that my daughter went to years ago, she wanted to take a car, and being the car girl that I am, we paid for her to have a parking spot at the apartment complex that was an off-campus student housing project, just as exactly what they're offering, because she had a car. So I truly believe the parking issue should be the last thing you think about anymore. I think this is a beautiful project. I think the University of Idaho has struggled against their peer institutions because they all have this. This has been built everywhere else. We haven't had anybody with the creativity to look at this piece of property that was more affordable and figure out how to densify it as beautifully as this. It's gorgeous. The economic impact to our community to have this project coming in is significant, and I think we need to look at that. Moscow needs to show some forward motion, and we need to have it be towards the University of Idaho students providing amenities that otherwise they don't have. We want the University of Idaho to grow. This has been the answer, and we've been trying for years to get it going, and now we have it offered up. So I would hope that you would move this process along so that we can get him into the place where he has to get in and start cleaning up the soils in which he's working with that he already knows he has to deal with up front. So thank you very much for your time, and I would hope that you would approve this project. Thank you.
Yes.
Rusty Olps. I live at 931 Harold Street in Moscow, and I also own property that shares about 200 linear feet of property line with Identity. So I'm one of 2 or 3 neighbors that they have, and I'm enthusiastically in support of this. The city's been working patiently with me for a couple of years as I've developed my amateur career as an infill developer, and they've been an incredible resource and encouraging all along the way and forgiving at times. And I just genuinely encourage you to offer Identity the same support and the same enthusiasm that I've enjoyed trying to do my little projects. Thanks.
Okay, any others hoping to speak in favor of the development? Okay, we can move to the neutral and also those who may be opposed, but we'll start with neutral, please. Yeah.
Louise Regaline, 423 Beach Street. I'm in the area of impact. And the concerns that I have are several. One is whether or not ITD, the emergency exit they're talking about having, is really a safety factor if anybody has driven that area and know that if you come out of there, you're immediately in the right-hand turn lane for the Troy Highway. There's a real issue of safety and whatever. The other thing is I don't think you can put a turn lane in with 12 feet. If you go up the hill, just immediately up the hill from there, and take a look at where the next intersection and light are and do some measurement, I think there's a real safety factor involved. The other is the University of Idaho and Moscow. The students who come here are basically rural to rural. We may regard ourselves as urban, but if you compare ourselves to any size city, we're not. And we live in a state where kids learn to drive whatever, motorcycles, cars, pickup trucks, starting at 12, 13, 14. You can get a driver's license at 14 if you have a need for one. Those people, I think, are going to bring cars to school. My other major concern, and this is my real concern, is where I live, we already have parking problems. I mean, I sometimes have difficulty getting in or out of my own driveway because of the non-residents who are parking. Beach Street is only, how many of you have been on Beach Street? It's really only 2 or 3 blocks long, depending upon how you want to count. And if you look at the adjacent streets, parking is a major issue in our area. To get from this development to our area, you either have to go out and go all the way around or in, or get your feet wet crossing the street. It's not ease of access, but I would hope that you would not consider my neighborhood as a parking reserve for this development, simply because it's already overparked. And if I couldn't park my cars off the street, many of my neighbors do not have access to off-street parking. If you drive down the street, you'll notice that. So if you want to look at this neighborhood as a place where people can park their cars, particularly if they plan on leaving them there till they need them on the weekend or whatever, not a solution anywhere in that whole neighborhood. So, thanks.
Thank you. Any others who would like to speak? Yes. At the end, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm a relatively new chair, so I'm learning the ropes myself here a little bit. Okay, anyone else would like to come forward and speak either of a general nature or oppositions or... okay, I guess you can come back and speak. Yes.
I just wanted to touch on just the last concern that was raised. We found from our experience that the parking issues that neighborhoods experience usually result from the students who actually drive in from much further away to try to find a parking space, and they drive in and they just find a spot. It's not from these type of developments that offer quite a bit of parking, and the remaining students who don't have cars actually move into the neighborhood. That's just not the case. The case is that you'll have students who live a mile away because it's less expensive, possibly, and they have a car and they drive in. And they need to find a spot, and they usually find a spot in the neighborhood. Typically has nothing to do with the project itself. There's not a spillover effect in a way. And again, a ratio of 2 cars per 4-bedroom, let's say, or 1 car per 2, it just really, from our experience, just so, I mean, think about it take a step back and think 214 cars. Do you really need that? And I think that a lot of some of the individuals who came in and spoke in support, and I appreciate that, said it perfectly. It's already too many from our experience. So, okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
You said you've been doing this all over the country. How long have you been doing this, and how many developments do you have?
Since 2008. And I've done California, USC, Santa Barbara, a number of projects there, San Luis Obispo, Nevada, Reno, Oregon, 2 in Washington, Gainesville, Florida, University of Missouri. So I've done
where in Washington, may we ask?
Seattle.
Okay.
The U District in Seattle. So, okay. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
And we have no parking there, by the way.
No,
no, it's a bit different there.
I know. I
understand,
didn't own a car when I was a student.
Yeah, of course, but not,
or in
not
Philadelphia.
Zero.
Okay, so let's see. So at this point, that would be his rebuttal, right? So that would be. I guess if you had anything else you wanted to bring up in the discussion.
If you have any questions specifically for me,
would you like to come up and see if anyone has any? Does anyone have any questions? Any further questions? Okay. Well, at this point then, we will close the public hearing, and we will have a deliberation among the commission members. So, does anybody have? Yes, Rob.
I had a question on one of the conditions, Mike. The development's going to furnish two, or the condition was to furnish two shared cars, and then it was going to be studied with the potential for reducing to one. What happens if the data shows that the usage is higher? Could you condition that to either keep two or add cars as the data would show?
Yeah, the commission certainly could word it that way. Yeah.
Other question? No.
This is probably the finest project that we've seen in quite a few years, and I've been sitting here for quite a few years. We don't normally get this kind of quality, and I'm touched by the project. I know the site quite well. You and I both have tried to do projects on this site.
As a matter of fact.
We've had years of fooling around with it with our students, and this is an ungainly site.
It is, yeah.
And this solution is quite remarkable, I believe. I see a few little issues, in terms of turning lanes and paths. But this begins now to set a precedent for the kind of work that we'd like to see in Legacy Crossing. And playing off of Nils Peterson's philosophical presentation, we need to remind people in our Quad City area that projects don't have to look like the apartment houses that we've managed to build fairly constantly over the last 10 years. So this is really bringing a new look. I don't want to say it's going to win a national prize architecturally. This is good architecture, though. I think I know a little bit about it. And it brings a new look. It brings, it's at our gateway to the campus and to the town. If there are some issues that we need to pay attention to in terms of the creek, in terms of the path, in terms of, I believe it's worth doing this project and finding out what those issues are. And who knows, maybe there will be some little parking issue. I think it's a little optimistic. I listen, I hear you. This is a stubbornly backward state.
You didn't say that.
Well, so, as you get ready to die, you get to say some things that you might not have said in the past. And so this is not backwardly stubborn. This is a beautiful project, and I recommend us to go forward with it. I think it's going to be exciting. It's going to say something to people as they drive into town. It will have an impact on the student population. I think there'll be a little bit, and the sighting is wonderful. It just happens that this is my trail. I don't ride every trail, but when I go to Starbucks for coffee, I'm on this trail, and I have to cross the street right here, so I know all about waiting for it, but it works. It's a lovely trail, and I'll be happy to ride my bike along these houses, and so I couldn't be more supportive. And I thank the developer and the architect for a good work, and I thank the staff as well for I perceive that you've been working on this for a while, because you can't get to this level of refinement without some good staff help. And I hope you had that.
Can I just say something about
Go
that?
ahead.
Because I think it's really important. And Ron and I mentioned this to Mike. I can tell you that we've had, before expanding beyond California, which is where we're from, we did a lot of work in Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo, and so on, as I mentioned, and now all over the country. And I can tell you that our experience working with Mike and Bill has been absolutely top-notch. And you should be very proud and happy to have Mike and Bill as in the planning department, as staff, and so on. They have been tremendous, just from a level of professionalism, responsiveness, attention to detail, at a level that's actually higher than anything that we've ever experienced. And there's no reason for me to say that. I think they deserve quite a bit of.
We know that. And thank you for saying that.
No, and I think it was important for me to come up here and say that, because I mean, just we talk about it all the time. Just amazing, and they, we make mistakes that they catch. So I mean, really, we appreciate it. So okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes, great.
He makes our job easy up here. He really does. He's good to work with. I'm for this as well. There's no reason. It's beautiful. Like Shelley, like everybody says, it's beautiful. It's going to make that area look awesome. And it's not varying too much not varying significantly from what it is now. I mean, you got general business, you got motor business, you got R4. I'm not sure there's an area in this town that has that you can combine those and just go up instead of out. And that's what we always talk about. You got to go on the outskirts of town, or you got to go up in the middle. And going up, it's perfect. It fits right in with the area. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan, with the little bit of departures, but they've been addressed. So there are a few concerns about parking, and we'll see in the long term how it works out, how it pans out, but I think it'll be fine. I'm agreeing with the millennials and the less cars. My daughter's in that boat. She could care less about driving right now, but time will tell on that. We'll see. So I'm in favor for it as well, 100%. I think it looks good.
Great.
I want to echo those comments. I think this is a fantastic development. When I go by there and look at it and wonder what's going to go up, this is beyond anything I could have imagined. I think it fills a need. I think it's a great looking project. I appreciate that the developer has got lots of experience in previous project, and clearly you know what you're doing. You've got a good architectural team. As you look around different campuses, when you go to college towns and you look at campuses, you do notice that the standard of student housing is going up. And it's puzzling to me as a parent and a former student why students think they should have it so good, but they do. And cities and campuses are working to fulfill that demand, and this does that. One of the things I think is important in development is that communities tend to set a standard, sort of a bar that they try to meet. But that's not enough. You want to exceed that, and I think this project really does. I look at this as something that's a good start, as an example for future development in Moscow. So I'm a couple more comments. One, parking. It's a boogeyman. It's a fetish. It's something we're always concerned about. But I think in the past there's been problems. Maybe there are currently still problems depending on where you go. But I think clearly when you read about parking trends, traffic trends, even technology trends with regard to cars, we can't get stuck on what we've been looking at. Things are changing. Even the demand and the need for parking is changing. What people think about driving is changing. Nils pointed out that that's part of the trend. Personally, I'm not convinced by the climate argument, but that clearly does drive a lot of the decisions that people make. And one of those decisions is we're not going to drive as much. We're going to walk. We're going to live in walkable communities. We're going to rely less on private transportation, more on public transportation. This fills all of those kind of things. So again, congratulations on a job well done. I think this is a great addition to Moscow.
Rob?
Just one more comment. I think it's a great project as well. I am excited. I come through that intersection multiple times a day, and I think it's going to really be a wonderful enhancement. I do want to acknowledge Louise's concern about the neighborhood. My wife and I drove through that neighborhood today looking for this exact thing, and I don't think that we should use that as a way of not moving forward with the project, but at least acknowledging that should the impacts occur to the neighborhood, the city find a way to work with the neighbors to mitigate those impacts. I think that this project, as I say, is a great thing to do. I want to see it done, but I also want to acknowledge I've seen this happen in my own neighborhood. So it's a reality, and you just have to be aware of it.
Don't you think it's fortuitous, though, that the creek is there? If the creek wasn't there, we could think of 12 ways to cross a highway, but getting across the creek is going to be slightly difficult. You have to get your shoes wet, and so I think that's a protection. I think that you have from for your neighborhood is the fact that, and actually water does sit in there occasionally.
Joel, you had.
No, I can't really add too much more to what's been said. I too like the project. I've been walking back and forth through this area since there were railroad tracks there, and fearful of what might be proposed for it. And I'm happy with what is now being proposed.
Well, I'll just add that probably 15 years ago, we did that project, looked at this site and looked at multiple mixed-use options with the students and the opportunities, and I've watched the identity of that corner get worse and worse and worse, except for Paradise Creek. And so it's exciting to actually have something that will give some there to that important gateway to campus and the community as well. And I guess I'm somewhat in agreement with Nils' argument that if we build it, they will come in terms of parking, and that people. I do see a different, having gone to college in Philadelphia, where if you put a car on the street, it lasted 5 minutes, so nobody, and you were lucky to have anything there, and then also in Seattle. But the student culture traditionally has been different here. It's very car dependent in terms of getting home at Thanksgiving and Christmas and other times of the year, and that it's hard to know. Will this help to change that culture? I think it's worth giving it a shot. I mean, and relaxing the parking standards, to see if that has an impact, and if we attract a student to that place that it prefers alternative transportation, and so I guess I am in accord with all of you on that. And. But we'll see whether that works. Yes.
Yeah. I just wanted to add, I agree with all the positive sentiment. I think it's will be wonderful for our university and for our city. And I will also just add, 50 years down the road, if anyone says, what were you guys thinking? I'll be the one to take the blame for that probably, since I'm the young one up here. And I would happily do it because I think this project is great. So thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Can I make a motion to follow up the Love Fest?
Yes.
So I would move that we approve the preliminary PUD as proposed with the conditions and recommendations recommended by staff. Should a motion that staff prepare the
that comes next.
That's
right?
next. Okay.
Yeah.
So I would move that we approve the preliminary PUD with the conditions recommended by staff.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposition? Okay, abstentions? All right. So now I'll entertain a motion regarding relevant criteria and standards, and staff preparing that.
I would move that staff prepare the relevant criteria and standards.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposition? Okay, abstentions? Okay, motion carries. All right, so that concludes this public hearing, and we move on to another one. more chance to.
Thank you.
I think
Congratulations.
commissioners would like to take about a 5-minute break.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
public hearing, an amendment to the city code, Chapter 6 of Title 4 to amend the Moscow sign code regarding use of portable signage within the motor business and general business zoning districts. And Mike's going to give a summary of this?
Yeah, I'll just give a summary. The ordinance is attached to your packet tonight. This is in response to a concern from a business owner regarding the feather signs, freestanding banner signs. And so we had talked about it at the last couple meetings and decided that, as trends, technology change, and different types of signage come out, that we should really take a look at maybe including that within the code. And so I think the commission decided that the appropriate section was to amend our portable sign portion of the sign code in order to allow either a sandwich board sign or a freestanding banner sign, and not both, but to be able to pick between the two. If you're closer to downtown, maybe, then you choose a sandwich board sign. If you're on the highway corridor, then maybe it's a freestanding banner sign to garner some attention. But so what we've done in the proposed ordinance here is to incorporate under our portable sign regulations for general business and motor business zoning districts. I know the commission was concerned about having the option of freestanding banners downtown, so we haven't included there. We've just included general business and motor business. And so what we've done is under maximum size included sandwich board signs, called those out, and also inserted freestanding banner signs. Not changing anything with the sandwich board signs. You're still entitled to a 4-foot wide or 4-foot high by 3-foot wide sandwich board, but allowing the option for a freestanding banner sign in the size that we had decided on was 13 feet in height and 24 square feet in size. And so what we've done is inserted that under the portable sign regulations, and also included statement subsection H there that says that portable signs that are tattered, torn, or in a state of disrepair are prohibited. So those are really the gist of the amendments, and I'd certainly be able to answer any questions that you have.
Do we have any questions?
I
Excuse
think
me.
we've covered it all.
It seems like it's summarized our discussions over the last several sessions quite effectively. So anybody?
I do have one more question. When the sandwich signs are downtown, and they inevitably have to be on city sidewalk, what's considered an acceptable distance from the front of the building for that sign to be? You know what I mean?
Yeah, we have a little bit different regulations downtown than where we're inserting it. This is general business and motor business, but downtown, you either have to have it right up against your building or out there towards the street, and you need to maintain a clear walking path of 6 feet.
Okay.
And this one allows in the motor business in the right-of-way under certain circumstances. And I guess, could you clarify when those circumstances would be?
Those circumstances would be if you have motor business property or general business property that maybe has non-conforming setbacks. So I think when we went through the sandwich board portable sign regulations, Cowgirls Chocolates, Pizza Perfection, their building was right up against the street, right up against the sidewalk, so they didn't meet the 10-foot setback that was required of the current zone. So in those circumstances where you can't actually put it on private property, it's just saying that it's allowed to go on the public sidewalk just in those circumstances.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I guess it's a public hearing, so we still have to go through the. Just remember, get a reality check here. All right. So, is there anyone who would like to? At this point, is there any discussion within the commission? Any questions? Any further questions? Okay. So we'll open the public hearing and entertain comments from the audience. Neither of you wish to speak? Okay, we will close the public hearing, and we'll have an internal discussion. And I think we just had it, but we can see if we need another one.
I'm happy.
Okay. Are we ready for a motion?
I move that we recommend this to council.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? Motion carries. So would someone like to make a motion to direct staff to prepare relevant criteria and standards?
So moved.
Okay. Second?
We don't have those.
I don't think we do that.
Oh, we don't do this. Why don't we do this for this?
It's an ordinance.
Oh,
so we don't
gotcha.
have-
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'll put
Okay.
that in my notes. Not for ordinance. All right.
Remember that? I wouldn't.
Well, I have my little cheat sheet here. Okay. So I guess we can adjourn. Unless somebody wants to make a motion to adjourn, but I don't think we do that here, right? So, all right.
You have
I have power. I can
despotic
take my gavel out
power,
again and
tyrannical
adjourn.
power to
Yeah.
just adjourn us.
Got the power, girl.